There we go, recording. Greetings, my A Cappellian family. My name is N'Namdi Bryant, aka the A Cappellian, the one-man vocal band even. Today I have a very special guest. He's a phenomenal singer, songwriter, producer, professor, and an entertainment lawyer. Oh, and by the way, he's the first tenor for the Breath of Life Quartet, which makes him an A Cappellian brother of mine. That said, I'm talking about the good counselor. Is none other than Mr. Loren Mulraine. How's it going, Doc?
Man, it's going well, man. Glad to be a part of your show, man.
Oh man, thank you. I've been wanting to have this conversation. Wow, probably since I heard your name, and when I first moved to Nashville in 1988. I'm sorry, 1998.
98.
Everyone said, "Look, if you need an attorney, you either go with so and so or Loren Mulraine." And for the record,
glad to be on that list, man. Glad to be on the list.
Before the record, let me just say this. By default, I went with so-and-so because the group I was with was represented by him.
Gotcha.
Otherwise, I would have came to you.
Hey, that's all good, man.
That said, what made you get into the entertainment business, and how long have you been in this game?
Yeah, man. So everything that I've done pretty much my whole life has revolved around music. You know, I started singing when I was a teenager in New York. I was in a very popular gospel group coming up in New York, and music was just always a big part of what I did. And so when I went to college, trying to stay on that track, I studied radio, TV, and film. Came out of college at University of Maryland and went into radio as a broadcaster. Did that for a couple years, and then decided I wanted to get on the business side of entertainment. Now all the while I was still doing music and writing and performing and all that. But my job was radio, and then I decided to go to law school. So I went to Howard Law with the goal of being an entertainment lawyer. And when I came out, I took a few years to get to Nashville. I was in DC for a while doing government contract law. And then I moved down to Nashville so I could really focus on the music side. Wow. And, Nashville, of course, being a music-centric city, but also being the center for Christian music, which is what I do, So it was a perfect move.
Wow. So let's jump into copyright.
Yeah.
If I may, because how safe is it to copyright the entire album rather than each song on the album have its own copyright?
Okay, so there are a couple of layers here, right? So I'm going to try to break it down. In a sound recording, there are two copyrights. There's a copyright in the song, and there's a copyright in the sound recording.
Yes,
those
sir.
are two different copyrights, right? So every song has one copyright because the song can only be written one time.
That's right.
But that same song could have hundreds of sound recording copyrights. Every time somebody makes a new record, there's a new sound recording copyright. So when you ask about copywriting a song or copywriting a record, there are a couple of things that I would kind of advise artists to look out for. Number one is you can actually copyright a collection, as you're suggesting, right? The key is, and the advantage for your viewers or listeners who don't know why you would do that, when you do a collection, you only have to pay that one fee.
Yeah.
As opposed to paying $55 for every song, right? So you can do a collection. The key though is you can only do a collection if all of the songs are written by the same person or persons, right? So let's say you and I, we're in a group, right? And we have our buddy Ron, who's also in the group, right? And let's say that you and I write 5 songs, and me and Ron write 3 songs, and then you and Ron write 2 songs.
Yes.
Right? We'd have to do 3 different collections because it's not the same writers for all the songs.
That's right.
Okay. Now that is different though than your copyright on the sound recording. When you do an album or you do an EP, you're probably going to do, most of us today, and this is one thing I'm really excited about, man. So many artists today are independent, right? So
Yes.
you're making the music, you got your studio at the house, you get in
Mm-hmm.
there, like you, man, you get on, you turn on the mic 8 times and sing 8 parts, you know what I mean? And then when you're
It
done,
takes
it's like,
one to know
hey.
one, but yeah.
So
Yeah.
after you're done, you got a sound recording, and
Mm-hmm.
you own the sound recording,
Yeah.
because you didn't have no record label paid for it for you,
No.
right? So
Yeah.
now, since you own the sound recording, you can go on and you can register that sound recording as a single collective unit for your copyright. Now, here's the catch: to make
Mm-hmm.
yourself have the most protection, if you have to do a collection, I understand that financially why you would do that, but there is a line on the copyright application that inquires whether you have alternate titles for the work.
Yes, it
What
does.
you should do there is list the 5 songs, or list the 8 songs or 10 songs. So you're calling it, say your collection might be, let's say you're calling it the A Cappellian Volume 1 is the collection, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But you've got, There Is a Quiet Place. And well, that wouldn't be a song you'd copyright, because that's, copyright. But
Right.
let's say you've got a bunch of songs that you're copywriting, you would also list those in that particular part.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I'm gonna have to go back and listen to this conversation. This is probably 5 minutes in, and
Oh man, that's good
oh
stuff.
my
Good stuff.
goodness. So, well, let me ask you this: Can I take one of your tunes, make it an a
Uh-huh.
cappella cover, and then add a lyric to it, or even add a brand new section to it and register it with ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, and expect to receive royalties from those
PROs.
thank you, PROs.
Yeah. So the answer is maybe. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So in order for you to copyright a new arrangement, the arrangement has to be significantly creative or original for it to be
Mm-hmm.
copyrightable. In the example you just gave, where you're using one of my songs, because
Yeah.
of the fact that my songs are still copyrighted, in order for you to do that, there would be a new copyright, presuming that it's original. And if you did it, I know it would be original enough. But presuming it's original enough, this new song would have a new copyright that would be jointly owned by you and me,
Mm-hmm.
because I've got the copyright in the underlying song. You've done a new arrangement, and together we now would own the new copyright. However, if you were doing, a lot of us who do in the genre where we live,
Mm-hmm.
we do a lot of PD, a lot of public domain songs, old
Yes.
hymns and spirituals and that sort of thing. If you were to do that and you had enough creativity in your original arrangement, you could copyright it and it will just be, just your name on it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Ah. So then we're going through these questions real fast.
And by the way, anybody who's listening, there are always nuances to all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
So you should listen to this and be educated by it, but don't take it as legal advice per se, because your situation is going to be unique.
That's right.
And you gave some examples there that took me left, or it might take me right. We're talking
Uh-huh.
about writing a new line, a new lyric line. That's the sort of thing that gives you that originality, where it's basically a derivative work, which is why you and I would own the copyright.
So here's one thing I did. Off my first album, I arranged "Oh How He Loves You and Me," written by Kurt Kaiser.
Mm-hmm.
I got a lot of good feedback, so I said, "Well, man, I should put it to sheet music." And I did that, and I sent it to J.W. Pepper, and it got a couple of sales from it, and then I got a nice little email saying "take it down or else." And I said,
Yeah.
"Whoa!" I didn't realize I thought a mechanical license meant, it covered all of that. And
Right. Yeah.
thank goodness, as a songwriter, it doesn't.
That's
So,
correct. That's correct. So since you bring that up, when you're talking about a mechanical, that's a license you get for making records, right? There's a different license for sheet music.
Say it again.
There's a different license for sheet music.
And
there's a different license if you want it to be in a film or TV, a synchronization license, right?
Yep.
So depending on how you're using the work, you're going to need a different kind of license. And it's an innocent mistake. Clearly, you didn't think you were doing anything wrong, right? But yeah, that's how that works. Now, normally the good news is that when you put videos up, specifically if you put it on YouTube, there's a mechanism in place where copyright owners can send YouTube a takedown notice, and they'll take it down, and you won't be sued. They'll take it down, and you won't be able to monetize it.
Oh yeah. I once received an email from, I guess it was YouTube, and I have a podcast, and I guess because it's also affiliated with a radio station, I'm assuming they cover the licensing. The licensing.
Yes.
But I guess on my own, when I try to put it on YouTube or even iTunes, I got an email from them.
Right.
Recently.
Right. Yeah.
So what is that called, and what to do?
Yeah. So if you're trying to put music on iTunes or sell it, digitally through any source, typically independent artists will use what we call an aggregator. So that might be TuneCore or CD Baby, one of those companies. And what the aggregators do is they allow you to upload all your stuff, all the songs, lyrics, whatever you're going to put on there. You pay them a fee, and then they distribute it to all of the digital platforms.
Right.
Obviously, if you were doing it yourself and you had to go, I'm with TuneCore. And so TuneCore has, 30 or 40 outlets they send it to. If you had to do deals with all those 40 people, it would take you forever to do that.
Yes. Yes.
So, but when you do that upload to TuneCore, each time you upload a song, there's a drop-down menu. Do you own the copyright to this? If you don't own the copyright to it, do you have a license? Right?
Yeah.
And if you don't have a license, then you're not gonna be able to put it up.
Yeah, you screw. Well, another innocent mistake I made. I did a cover tune. I can't say which one it is, but I did a cover tune, and I decided to add a bridge to it.
Okay.
And one of my buddies in the industry said, "Man, did you get permission yet?" I said, "You know what? No, but I love this bridge. Man, this is the dude, it fits perfectly." They said, "Well," and I wondered, can I get publishing for what I added on? They said, "Man, because people from that era sometimes they don't want you meddling with their stuff. Just take this mechanical license and enjoy your 99 cents for the downloads, or 91 cents. And that's it."
Yeah. So what you're talking about there is what we call a derivative work, right? So the Copyright Act gives the author of the work certain exclusive rights. And one of those exclusive rights, in addition to making copies and distribution and public performance, et cetera, one of those rights is called the right to make derivative works. And derivative work is a work that's based on another work, but has some new elements to it, right? And with a derivative, unlike if you're trying to just do a plain cover, you just get a regular compulsory mechanical license and you're good to go. And in essence, the owner of that song really can't say no if the song has been released before, right?
Okay.
That's why it's called a compulsory license. You still have to get it and you still have to pay for it, but they can't reject you because it has been released before. There is not that same opportunity is not there for derivative works. With derivative works, they can say no. And the theory behind it, and you'd understand that as a creator, the theory behind it is you should be able to control how your work is manipulated, and whether or not you agree with that change being made. So I've had experiences with artists who tried to get try to make slight changes to lyrics and typically it's artists who are doing a gospel record and they want to take a popular song.
Mm-hmm.
One of my clients wanted to do "Hello" by Lionel Richie. Another one wanted to do a song by Bob Dylan.
Mm-hmm.
Both of those writers, they said, we don't allow changes to our lyrics. So it was just they just couldn't do it. And in one case, a beautiful recording had been made, right? Well produced, lovely vocals, but it was like, that's just gonna be for you and the fam because you can't can't release that.
Okay, what about is performing it live? Is that dangerous to do? That exact song.
That's an interesting question. When you perform live, the licensing is typically handled by the venue, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now you've added a different element to it with regard to it being a derivative work. I guess technically you really would have to get permission to do that if it's derivative. Yeah. Of course, if it's a cover, you don't need permission at all. You can sing, at a church or at a school or at a arena or whatever, and usually the arena or the church or the school, wherever, they take care of the licensing. Yeah.
Wow. And okay, well, so after unfortunately Kurt Kaiser, the songwriter for "Oh How He Loves You and Me," just passed away. So how long after their death is their song? Does it become public domain?
Long after you're going to need to use it, my friend. I wish you good health and good long life, right? But the copyright term lasts for the life of the author plus 70 years.
Plus 70, yes.
Yeah.
So when does a song become public domain? I think, is it 1915?
No, there was a 1909 Act and there's a 76 Act. So under the 1909 Act, there are some songs who have already gone into public domain.
Mm-hmm.
And every year, more and more go into public domain. But under the 76 Act, and that's for any song that was copyrighted or created from 1978 on, right? Any song created from 78 on is still protected by copyright and will be until 70 years after the author dies.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I do in one of my classes, I give some examples where one of the examples that I like in my classes is I use the Beatles, right?
Mm-hmm.
Got 4 members of the Beatles, and 2 of those members have passed away, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
One of them, John Lennon, died in 1980.
Yeah.
George Harrison, I want to say it was 2001. It was somewhere around there. George Harrison died, right? So McCartney and Ringo are still alive.
Yeah.
Okay. So the challenge I have for the students is figure out when the copyright ends for, say, a Beatles song from 1966 versus a John Lennon song that he wrote just before he died versus a George Harrison song that he put out in 1995, right? And you have to be able to figure out, okay, well, this one, it's a 78 Act, so it's life plus 70. So the John Lennon song, he had a song called Starting Over in 1980. That would expire in 2050 because he died in 1980.
That's right. Wow. Yeah. So Yesterday, no, who wrote Yesterday?
Yesterday was McCartney.
Paul.
Yeah. I think it was credited as Lennon and McCartney, but it's pretty much known as a McCartney song.
Yeah.
So that one would be, that's under the 1909 Act.
I see.
So that one's complicated, but that one's going to be 95 years from the date that it was copyrighted.
Yeah. So, okay, well, let's talk. That's a perfect segue. How important is a split sheet, and how do you handle writing with someone who's not affiliated with the pros?
All right, so I wouldn't be worried so much about the non-affiliation part. That's that person's problem.
Yeah.
But as far as the split sheet is concerned, you should have an understanding. I always tell writers and producers and even musicians who are on a project, to have a clear understanding of what our roles are, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you walk into a room, you're a session player, you're going to play guitar on this record, you're going to play keys on this record, and that's all you're supposed to do, then understand that, right? And understand that if you add some lovely licks to it, that doesn't make you a co-writer.
Great job. Thanks. Yes. Yes.
Here's your check.
That
God
riff. Wow, amazing.
Yeah, here's a bottle of water for the road. You're good. But if you're actually co-writing the song, and quite often in the modern music industry, producers are usually very involved in that process, right? Mm-hmm. Especially if you're talking about, contemporary pop, contemporary Christian, R&B and soul styles. Mm-hmm. Producers are usually heavily involved in the writing. So what happens is, you've got a producer who maybe he's worked on a track, and then the singer comes in and they say, hey, write a top line to this or write some lyrics to this. At that point, that it's a joint authorship because you both intend for it to be a work that you put together.
Yes.
The question, though, that you're getting to is how do we split it? And that's what a split sheet is for, to decide if you're going to do some less than equal split. If you don't do a contract, it automatically is an equal split. All right?
Really?
Yeah, you don't have to do a contract to have an equal split. But if you want it to be unequal, maybe this person just wrote, like, you had a guest rapper come in and do 8 bars.
Yeah.
You're not going to give them 50% of the song for that, right?
No, sir.
So maybe you'll give them, maybe 10% or whatever. Uh-huh. And so for that, you'll need a split sheet. Yeah.
Wow. I've been in the studio one time, this is about a decade ago, and he asked me to create a beat, just using, the vocals. Mm-hmm. I said, okay. So I did this track, and he said, okay, what do you charge? And I said, well, okay. Gave him a rate. I said, but also I want my publishing. Mm-hmm. And he said, no. If I pay you, that's it. And I said, no. You pay me because I just did some work for you. Now,
right. Yeah.
I also own this work that. Yeah.
And if he wants to add to it, then you guys will jointly own the song, right? Yeah.
But he wanted just me to just do the work, let me pay you a nice hefty fee.
Yeah.
And I said, no.
Yeah.
And
well, that's why, in general, I mean, there's some cases where people do just sell their rights like that. But as an entertainment attorney who, works on behalf of artists and,
mm-hmm.
I'm an artist advocate fighting for artists' rights, I would frown on that kind of arrangement where you're giving up your copyright just for mm-hmm. a check. And let's be honest, most songs don't make a whole lot of money, mm-hmm. but it's still yours, whether it makes $100 or $100,000, it's still yours.
That's right.
And that allows you, maybe you pass it on to your kids. Maybe you sell it in your catalog later on. You should be able to do whatever you want to do with it. And you lose that opportunity if you just sell the rights.
That's right. Well, let's go to explain the 360 deal and what's your take on it? I think it sucks, but
so let me get comfortable on that one. So
mm-hmm.
maybe about 18, 20 years ago, the first time we really heard about a 360 deal. The first one was by this rock band named Korn.
Yeah.
They did one, and then shortly after that, Madonna did one. And the one that Korn did, I think, paid them like $80 million. I want to say Madonna's might have been like $110 or $120 million. Mm-hmm. And what they got out of that was this, of course, a ridiculous sum of money, right? But in return for that, the record company got some interest splits, so to speak, in all of their income streams. So that would be, they get a piece of touring, they get a piece of merchandising, they get a piece of publishing. They, of course, get the record piece that they always got. And in return for that, you get this lump sum of money. Well, to the extent that Korn did it or that Madonna did it, it might end up still being a fruitful proposition for them because of the
Yes.
amount of money that changed hands.
Uh-huh.
But for regular people, it didn't go that way. What happened was, of course, it never goes that way for regular people, right? What happened with the record labels in the early 2000s, they were starting to really suffer financially because of Napster.
Yes.
Napster came along, started this illegal file sharing thing. I feel even like dirty when I say sharing. It wasn't sharing, it was taking. Right?
That's right.
So, but they started doing that, and essentially other formats popped up, Grokster and so on, and the record companies started really taking a hit financially. Right around that time, iTunes popped up, and you were able to buy stuff on iTunes, which was cool. But a lot of people now started buying singles instead of whole albums.
Yes. Yeah.
So because of that, record companies, they said, wait a minute, we're losing all this money. We've got to find a way to keep the ship afloat. And what they decided to do was start applying these 360 deals as their standard contract.
Wow.
But you weren't getting the $80 million check for it.
No.
Right? It was just a regular record deal. And the record company would take half of your publishing, half of your merchandising, half of your touring, all that stuff. This is how it started. They were just taking it. And, over the years, through, negotiation and kicking and screaming on the parts of artists and artist attorneys, those percentages have dipped significantly, right? They're not taking 50% anymore. So, sometimes you can't get away from it, quite honestly, as an artist representative. Depending on the label you're dealing with and the clout you have, you might be stuck in some form of 360. But what I always advise the artist to fight for is make those percentages, number one, as low as possible, right? And make sure that whatever the record company is taking a piece of, whatever they're commissioning, so to speak, they have some hand in enhancing, right? So don't just take my merchandising because I'm signed to your label. You get a piece of merchandising if you're doing something to make the merchandise. Yeah.
That's right.
So that's right. The point. Keep the number low and make sure they're working to earn their percentage.
Wow. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. So now that CDs are pretty much out of the picture, as an artist, what do you think is the next tangible thing we can sell at the merch table in place of the CD? Like I'm hearing flash drives is the next thing.
Yeah. I don't know that flash drives artists have been selling those for a few years and they're nice collector's item, kind of keepsake types of things. But I don't know that necessarily moves the needle from CDs per se. It's really, you're still selling them a physical piece, right?
Yeah.
And either people are going to want that physical piece, which is the CD, or in some cases vinyl, or they don't. And if they don't, there's nothing you can do. The disc, the thumb drive is not going to say, oh, I didn't want a CD, but I'll buy the thumb drive. And that typically is not going to happen. They would be just as likely, man, to buy a download card, right? You say, hey, I want you to support my music. I know you probably don't have a CD player anymore. So here's a download card, put this code in your computer and you get the music on your computer. And that might be the way you do it, because then you still are able to touch and feel, right? The fan still gets a chance to interact with the artist, right? And you can package it. I can imagine it being packaged in such a way that, you could maybe sign it or something like that, and it becomes something, part of the experience. But ultimately, man, we have to move, and you and I have, because of the genre that we're in, there's an additional challenge, right? I did a concert in Chattanooga. I guess it was about a year ago. I mean, this year, 2020 is like the year that never happened, right? So sometime in 2019.
As if it never were.
No, I'm telling you. So I did this concert, and I'm on stage, and I'm talking to the audience. And I asked the audience, I said, I'm talking about my product, and I've got these CDs and so on. How many of you listen to Spotify? and one hand went up, man.
Really?
One hand. Yeah. Now the audience, to be fair, was like 40-ish and up,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And the hand that went up was like a teenage guy, you know. Um, but I think that we do have a challenge though in the gospel marketplace where it's, you know, a lot of our church audience is that kind of mature audience
Yeah.
that maybe they grew up having the CD.
Good for you. Yeah.
And they want that thing, and they don't want to. Well, how does Spotify work? Well, it's really easy. You just go on and, you know. So the other trick though is that with Spotify and Tidal and all, you know, Apple Music, all the streaming services, you have to have so many streams.
Yeah.
I mean, just you really have to.
I recall,
you know.
Yeah, I recall my first royalty statement from CD Baby for Spotify. It said 0.0018, and I'm like, okay, I don't get to a real number till like the third digit. What is that? That's not even a penny. I can't. I'm getting a fraction of a penny for this song that I worked so hard.
Yeah.
And I can't win. Spotify, man. So
it's a challenge, man.
You know, going back to your point you made, like your audience. One of the last concerts I did was with Elder T. Marshall Kelly. For those of you guys who aren't aware of him, he's probably 86 years old.
And
Roland Gresham, and they have mature audiences.
Right.
And at first I said, man, I'm not taking these CDs. Then I said, you know what? Their audience, that age group, they love CDs. They still have CD players in their cars, in their houses.
That's right.
I mean, it wasn't even a packed house, but I came back with like maybe $500-600.
Yeah.
And I
that
said, hey,
they still want the physical product, man.
Yeah, and we were going to do a few dates, thanks to COVID, you know.
Oh, man.
Wow. Let's see. How do you go about trademarking your band's name?
Yeah, so a trademark is a little bit more sophisticated and a little bit more complex than a copyright. Copyright, and I usually advise my artists and my friends, you know, you can go online and it's intuitive, you know, how you do a copyright registration. Trademark is a little bit more complex, so I typically do not advise people to do that on their own. I advise them to call me or to call another lawyer who could do it for them.
And I was told to call you too, by the way.
Yeah, because if you spend $225 on the filing fee, and if you get it wrong, that's just money you lost, right? So there's certain things that your attorney will be able to look out for with regard to whether or not this is something that can be protected. They'll do a search for you to make sure that there's no confusion in the marketplace. Nobody's using a name that's you know, confusingly similar, and then they'll know exactly what to put in the application and what category to put it under and all of that stuff. Now, keep in mind that a name that is the same or similar to another name might still be able to be copyrighted if there is no confusion likely in the marketplace because of them being in very diverse areas. So when I say areas, I'm really talking about the thing that is being sold, right? So if you're selling carpeting and you call it, you know, Blue Edge carpeting, right?
Yeah.
And you've got a carpet store in you know, Dalton, Georgia. It's supposed to be the carpet capital of the world, I understand. So you've got like carpet Dalton, Georgia, and then someone else. Yeah, check it out, man. Be able to get some discount. Tell them I sent you.
Yeah.
So in Nashville, you have a guy who's starting a record company. He wants to call it Blue Edge because whatever reason, right?
Yeah.
So he's got Blue Edge Records. Chances are you can get Blue Edge Records to go through the trademark process without it being rejected because there's no likelihood of confusion. Nobody's going to buy carpet and think they're buying your record, right?
Yes. Yes.
And so that's the
wow.
basic way to
So you first of all, I can't thank you enough, for this.
It's my pleasure, man.
Years ago when I first moved to Nashville, I didn't realize how much things cost. And, he said, well, so what do you see? Show me your vision as a solo artist. I said, man, I can see it now. I need a tour bus. I need an accountant. I need a tour manager. I need a booking manager. I need this, that, and the other. He said, oh, so is your accountant going to travel with you? I said, yeah. Plan to make a lot of money. He said, oh,
right.
You need
Somebody
a tour
got to
bus
collect
too.
the money, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And he said, oh, so how much does it cost to just lease a bus? I said, I don't know. After that conversation, I had never felt more discouraged in my life, because most people don't think about just the inside, just the simplest things. You need a bus driver.
Yep.
And you have to talk somebody into driving for you.
Right.
Make them quit.
While you're sleeping.
Yeah, while you're asleep, they're driving. And you have to put them in a hotel while you're singing. And hopefully they can get a good night's rest or a good day's sleep.
Yeah.
And on an average,
right.
whether it's an amateur artist or mainstream, somebody big time, CC, Bon Jovi, what is the average pay for a tour?
Well, that's a really wide open question that there's not a single answer to that, but I will say that when you get to the superstar acts, the Beyoncés and the Biebers of the world, you're talking 7 figures a night. So you could understand why, they have four buses and 6 trucks and all that, because they're making $1 million a night.
Yeah.
But to put a tour like that on the road costs you $200,000 a night, right? So you've got that gross, and then you got to take off all those expenses off the top. Now, for a typical artist who's trying to really get to that level or get to any level, obviously you start off at a much more humble level. Maybe it's a tour van, right? And maybe the band members themselves take turns driving, right? And maybe you're just going out for weekends.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're trying to, the weekend thing works, again, those who are watching this, you and I are in the Christian or gospel market, right?
Yeah.
So the weekend thing works because that's when churches are doing what they're doing. Right? So, if you go out on Friday and come back on Sunday night, you can hit some spots and do okay.
That's right.
And that keeps you from having that, 5 nights of being on the road cost, which a typical, country artist might be out for the whole week.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that ends up running up some big bucks. Now, this is why, by the way, one of the things that baby bands will often get in their record deals is tour support from the label. And what that is the label will give them some financial support to go on tour with a bigger artist. Yeah. Because what happens is if you're unknown and you go on the road with a big name artist, you come, right?
Say that one more time.
But that bigger artist is paying you a fee. Yeah, I think I got frozen. Yeah. So I was saying, a baby band, in order for them to get notoriety, they go out on the road with a bigger act, right?
Yes.
But the bigger act, who I said might be making $1 million a night for their price, they might allot, $10,000. We'll set aside $10,000 for our opening act, this unknown baby band from, Huntsville, Alabama, right? And your label says, oh, we got to get you on this tour because nobody knows you. You're going out with this artist. This is going to be well worth it. Let's say in the gospel market, let's say it's Kirk Franklin.
Mm-hmm.
You want to go open up for Kirk Franklin? Yeah, heck yeah, right?
Uh-huh.
But we can't afford to be on the road if they're only giving us $10,000 a night, because we got, 8 people in the band and group or whatever, and we got to, feed everybody. We got to have hotels and all that. So it's going to cost us $12,000 a night to be on the road. Well, the record company's not going to say, oh, well, you can't go, because they want you to get that notoriety.
Yeah.
So what they do is they'll give you tour support to cover your costs so you can go out and tour. Of course, as you might imagine, that has to be recouped before you get your royalties.
Yeah. So then with that said, let's say you're an independent artist. It's just, it's me, my road manager.
Yeah.
How do you negotiate? Who do you get tour support from then?
Yeah, you won't get tour support then. Yeah, it'll be no, it's on you. If you're indie, it's on you, right? So what you do then is you figure out, how do I make this thing work and, not lose money, right?
Yeah.
Because if I can go out and, I make a few $100s every night, and it's my first time getting out there, I'll do it, right? Because now I'm being exposed. Let's say it's a 30-city tour, for example.
Yeah.
There are now, and even if it's a modest, let's not say it's a superstar, let's say it's a modest, kind of tour with, 2,000 people every night, right? If you do 30 dates, that's 60,000 people who saw you perform.
Yeah.
So even if you're only making a few $100 each time, it's worth it, because now all those people, they become fans now. They want to buy merch. They go to your website. They follow you and they listen to you on Spotify, and they run those streams up. So your 0.0000, can knock off some of those decibels.
Yeah.
So that's the value, and that's essentially what happens, man. When you're an indie artist, you are a record label. So just like the record label, the major labels invest by writing checks, you invest by your time.
Wow. That's right.
You've got to invest your time, and you put in. Man, I'll tell you a story, man. I got really, I've been writing for years and years and years, and I've been doing, production to some extent for, I guess since my first album came out in '93.
I remember that.
With a few people, and since then I've been doing some kind of production, but I didn't get like really, really serious about like my home studio setup until 2014. And I'll tell you what happened.
Really?
I was representing an artist, this girls group, and they had a producer, really pretty big time producer, who wanted to do some demos with them. And he called me up and said, "Hey man, I need a studio with this, and this, And so I got him like the hottest studio in town. It was a place called the Sound Kitchen down in Franklin.
Remember. Yes, I love the Sound Kitchen.
Oh man, sweet place. So we went in that night. He goes in with the girls. He's got all his files and stuff for his Pro Tools set up, and he's producing these girls in the studio. And I'm just sitting there watching him, and I'm watching this dude. I'm like, this guy is ridiculous. His speed, his precision. He knows all the shortcuts. He's like hitting stuff, and it's just crazy. I'm talking to him like, no, what? How much time do you spend on this stuff? He's like, man, I'm in the studio 12 hours a day. So I said, okay, practice clearly makes perfect, right?
Clearly.
So at that point, I said, you know what? And before that time, I hadn't put it all together. I'm an educated guy and stuff, and maybe I didn't catch it as quickly as I should have, right? At that time, I put it together and I said, you know what? If I really want to get good at this thing, I need to be in the studio every day. Now, I can't do it 12 hours a day because I've got a job, right?
Yeah.
But starting that day, man, I went for the next 3-4 years, I was probably in the studio 5 days a week.
Wow.
And what I did, man, was I just started building up my home situation. Got the right gear, started getting the sound panels for the wall, got me a nice high quality mic,
Yeah.
good interface, all that stuff, and got the plugins. And little by little, now I'm at the point where, I never need to go to a studio again.
Wow.
Everything I need, I do in my home.
That's right.
And it sounds like, I went to the sound kitchen.
Yeah, that's right. And, do it yourself. That's the way to go. I go as far as before I could afford digital equipment, heck, analog equipment.
Yeah.
My analog equipment were 2 radios.
You're old school, man.
Come on.
Yep. And then, back and forth, man.
Yeah. And then I got sophisticated. I said, wait a minute. My headphones can be a mic, and that'll eliminate the hiss.
All right.
I was passing out cassette tapes with me recording with 2 radios, or I would use a telephone with a speakerphone.
Okay.
And
play it and sing over what you already recorded.
Yeah. So I didn't even have a karaoke machine. I couldn't afford that in Nashville. But that's the good old story of Nashville. When I first moved there, I said, you know what? I'll work where the stars live. I worked at the Brentwood in McDonald's.
Okay.
The Brentwood McDonald on Eastway something. Anyway, by 65. And
Hickory Hollow?
I couldn't afford business cards, so I would tear up 50 sheets of paper and write my name, my email address, and my home phone number. I didn't even have a cell phone then.
Yeah.
And anyone who looked like a musician, excuse me, are you a musician? Wow. Yeah, I'm at the drive-thru. I'm not supposed to be doing this. And
right.
I'm sure you know Tim Davis.
Yep.
He gave me my first gig.
Okay.
He got me my first gig, and wow. But he's
at the drive-thru.
At the drive-thru, and wow. I met Caldwell, Cedric.
Yeah, Cedric. Yeah.
Anyway, that's a whole nother story. But he's a good dude, man. I'm gonna let you go ahead. You had something to say?
No, just he's a good dude. Yeah, Cedric and Victor, good dude.
Oh man, he looked like Wilt Chamberlain. That's how the conversation started.
Yeah. You're right.
And I said, so what do you do? He said, I produce. Really? Man, I'm working here. And I moved to Nashville for music, I was working at Borders Bookstore.
Yeah.
In Brentwood. And I met Felix Cavallari from the Young Rascals. Grooving, chilling.
Yeah.
I started to the point where he called me for every studio session he did.
Wow.
Every studio recording, I was on that for a good 2-3 years.
Okay.
But yeah, a couple of more questions. I don't want to keep you long. Sampling.
Yeah.
How short does a sample has to be in order not to get a call from Attorney Mulraine?
Yeah, man. So this is a funny thing. The law is. So I don't want to get too complicated, but let me try to break it down. So the federal law has circuits. The country is divided up into circuits.
Mm-hmm.
Second Circuit is up there near New York. Sixth Circuit is here in Nashville. Ninth Circuit is in California. Those are like the big music area circuits, right? And in different circuits, the courts have ruled differently on the sampling question. In Nashville, in the Sixth Circuit, there was a ruling called Bridgeport, the Bridgeport case, where they ruled that any sample, no matter how short, has to get a license or it's infringement.
Wow.
Even as a lawyer who represents artists, I think that's a ridiculous ruling, right? Because I believe that if your sample is so short that it's not recognizable, I think there should be a fair use. I really think there should be fair use. Now, in the Ninth Circuit, which is California, there was a case that held differently. And that case was a really funny case. It involved a producer who had essentially sampled one of his old productions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Madonna's song Vogue.
Wow.
Shep Pettibone was the producer, and he sampled a song that he had produced with the Sal Soul Orchestra like 10 years earlier. Just this one horn stab, and got sued. And the court said, no, first of all, this sample is not a copyright. That note is not a copyrightable thing, right? And so I guess I haven't really answered your question because it depends on where you are, right?
Yeah.
So if you're doing a sample, that is the strong answer is this: if you're doing a sample that is recognizable, then you absolutely have to get it cleared. If you're doing a sample that is just one note, or maybe it's a drum hit, you just love the way that snare sounded on that one part.
Yeah.
It may be possible to do that sample. I'm not giving you legal advice, boys and girls,
right.
But it might be possible to do that sample and manipulate it with your solutions and your mixing and whatnot, so that it does not sound like the song.
Right.
If on the other hand you're taking like a recognizable lick, right? So just for example, let's take a recognizable lick, like say the guitar on what's that?
Okay, no, Billie Jean.
Well, I was about to say Beat It. All right, so yeah, let's Billie Jean. Either way, they've got those hooks, right?
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
Even if you just took 3 seconds of that, you got to get that cleared, man. Got to get that cleared.
Well, and you can't trademark. I'm sorry, not trademark. You can't copyright a chord progression. How are the lines blurred when it comes to like blues? Because at the end of the day, blues, gospel, bluegrass, they're all the same.
Yeah.
It's
like a 12-bar blues kind of thing. Yeah.
Say it again.
It's like that 12-bar pattern, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why you can't copyright a chord progression, right? Because it's such a basic. There's a limited number of ways to express a chord progression. Right? So if you take that chord progression, it's just one piece of the song. Another piece is what's the melody doing. Another piece is what are the lyrics doing, right? And all those things might come into play. If you've got a chord progression and a melody that sounds substantially similar, you're probably in trouble. But if it's just the chord progression, chances are you're okay if you got a different melody. Because if you take something as simple as a 1-4-5, for example, 1-4-5, there was a case, it was a country artist, I forgot who it was, but we covered this like years ago in my copyright class. And a guy had sued this country artist saying that his song was, lifted from this unknown guy's pattern.
Wow.
And the judge, I guess, had a sense of humor. In his first line in writing the case, he said, the 1-4-5 pattern is the most used pattern in the history of music.
Yeah.
You can't copyright a 1-4-5, and yeah.
Yeah. No, that's crazy. Why would anyone? Yeah. Is there? I'm trying to think of any other questions. How can the people reach you? And when is the next Loren?
I'd love to hear from any of your listeners who have any legal questions they want me to kind of guide them through, or if they have some musical things they want to get involved in. As like I said, I write and I produce and sing, and would be happy to collaborate with folks. Hit me at my email, Loren Mulraine, LorenMulraine, Loren Mulraine at yahoo.com, or you can go to lorenmulraine.com, my website, or you can find me. I use my name to brand everything. So you can find me on Instagram under my name. You can find me in Facebook under my name, Twitter under my name. I don't want anybody to have to look too hard to find me.
Yeah.
So, right,
I mean, the A Cappellian is savvy, but it's hard to trying to explain to people, the
Sweet name,
acapella.
man. And I like the gear too.
Thank you. And I have a coffee mug. Well, I don't know if
Nice,
you can see
man.
that. Yeah.
There you go. Yep, love it.
Thank you, brother. I can't thank you enough. When is the next Loren Mulraine album coming out? And what's up with Breath of Life Quartet?
Yeah, so I'm working on music right now. When I say working on it, it's at my mixer right now, right?
Good.
So we got this time it's going to be 5. I'm not doing a full album. I'm doing an EP this time because I'm trying to adjust to this new method of releasing single after single after single, which is what they're doing in the digital space.
Yes.
Right? So I've got these 5 songs that will be coming out kind of one after another in the new year. So the songs are done, the recording is done, but usually what I do myself and my process is I write the stuff here at home. I do the basic production here, and then I have a production partner who adds his elements. He lives, down the street.
Good.
And then we get all our stuff together, and then we take it to our good friend and we all used to work together at Middle Tennessee State. We take it to our good friend who mixes it for us. And so once the mix is done, of course, the next thing is mastering, and then we'll be hitting the streets. So I'm actually working right now, and this one's going to be. I'll probably come back on your show to talk about it.
Good.
When it comes out, because this time I'm trying some different things with regard to promotion, and that could be really, if it worked, it'll be something to really talk about to independent artists on how you get people to know about your music without having a big record label behind you. So yes, 5 songs. They'll be coming. They'll be starting to hit the street in February. Good. But the record it's ready.
I'm sure it is, man. I'm sure.
As for Breath of Life Quartet, man, we had all these plans for 2020, and one of the plans was releasing some new music. We've been working on new music for a while, but you know this, right? But the challenge is for us. There's 4 guys, and we live in 3 different cities. 3 different cities.
Yeah.
So 2 of us, me and Dwayne, live in the Nashville area. Daz lives in Virginia Beach area. And then Ron lives in Maryland, like the DC area.
Well, I thought Daz was in DC.
He was, but he's been in Virginia Beach now for maybe about 3 years.
Oh.
Yeah, so, just coordinating, we'd have to, okay, what weekend are we going to get together? And we get together and we knock out 2 songs. And then we, 5 more months before we do 2 more songs.
Oh, yeah.
So we had some big plans this year, but it got kind of waylaid because of COVID. So we'll see when things get started up again. We'll get back rolling again. But somebody just emailed me or texted me a few days ago and said, "I'm watching this concert you guys did at Pine Forge," and he was asking me a bunch of questions.
I just saw that. I just saw that concert. Who was sick? Dwayne was sick.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I don't even remember the concert. But somebody told me that they were watching it, so it must have been shown on somewhere this weekend.
I just saw it on YouTube.
Okay.
The full concert, you guys. The weather was crazy.
Yeah.
Dwayne was sick.
Yeah. I remember. Yeah.
Wow.
So anyway, the friend who texted me said, "Hey, is the group still together?" And I said, "About as together as anybody could be in 2020,
Man.
But yeah, hopefully next year we'll be able to get some stuff done.
I pray so, because first, let me say this. Thank you so much for just holding up, doing what you do as an attorney, an independent artist, then being a part of Breath of Life Quartet. I mean, for just holding that banner, and you guys, I want to see more. Oh, I just heard. I could tell there's some kind of interruption. But I pray that you guys continue to keep pushing, and let's do some dates together so we can sell CDs.
Would love to.
So we can sell these things.
Yes, sir. And I love what you do, man. Love your creativity. Love your arranging. Just great stuff, man.
Thank you. Brother, thank you so much. And ladies and gentlemen, Loren Mulraine.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, man.
Here,
God
man.
bless.
All right. See you.
Peace.